Sometimes, cameras capture moments that they just never should have. Someone presses that record button and boom, it captures real people in their final moments, most of the time completely unaware of what's coming. I'm Ryan from Tragedy Tales and welcome back to the channel. This week, for the 27th time, I've scoured the darkest corners of the internet to bring you 5 more clips captured right before horror. So strap in and draw the curtains and let's get right into it. Diving straight in, we've got a shocking and frankly perplexing clip that was recorded in Dagestan, a Republic of Russia, on November 7th, 2025. That day, a Russian Ka-226 helicopter left the Kislar electromechanical plant, a Russian weapon manufacturer, bound for Izhbash airport, carrying 7 people aboard, including the pilot. The passengers inside consisted of several staff members from the electromechanical plant. This trip to the airport was one that they did frequently. But this is where the clip begins. Captured at approximately 3 local time in Dagestan, the weather was overcast and windy, and all on video, a helicopter came into view looking to land on the pier jutting out of the beach. Now, because the clip you're about to see is so strange, some people online accuse it to be AI generated, but I've done my research and I can guarantee you that this video is 100% real, as reported on aviationsafety.net, as well as several reputable news sources. On video, the helicopter was looking to land on the pier because this was an emergency landing. According to several witnesses, the aircraft had caught fire mid-flight and had rushed to land on the beach. You can just see it's coming in way too fast, and as it hits the landing zone, the tail makes impact first, snapping on impact. With warning signals blaring and a large bang, it would have been obvious to all aboard that something had been hit or was damaged. In most other conventional helicopters, losing your tail like this would have meant an instant loss of directional control and an immediate deadly spin. But luckily, this was a Ka-226, a Russian helicopter with a unique coaxial rotor system. This basically means that it has 2 main rotors above, instead of the one, spinning in opposite directions, eliminating the need for the traditional rotor to fly. The Ka-226's design meant that the pilot in this case would have had some ability to control the aircraft despite basically losing the tail. As he still had control, most pilots in this situation would rush to land as soon as possible. But in this case, the pilot chose, or was seemingly unable to do so. Instead of landing instantly, the pilot continued hovering erratically. The helicopter can then be seen gaining elevation and losing it repeatedly. 12 seconds into the clip, the chopper dipped into the water, where here they could have ditched or landed. But still, for an unknown reason, the pilot continued on the throttle. You can see the pilot navigating through the air, still with a broken tail. Regardless, on camera you can see the helicopter continue to rise up into the air, getting further and further away from the ground and to safety. Things then went from bad to worse, as the helicopter seemed to enter an uncontrolled climb in elevation, and then a terrifying spin out.
Он куда-нибудь туда посадить его. Ой, блин.
It must have been so terrifying inside. Alarms would have been blaring, the ground would have been getting closer and closer, the helicopter would have become a metal box full of screams, everyone inside just hoping and praying they survive what is to come. Within seconds, the chopper fell like a lead balloon near the village of Archisu in Dagestan, crash landing in a building before exploding into a huge fireball. The Russia's Ministry of Emergency Situations reported that an 80 square meter fire broke out at the crash site with a magnesium fire from the helicopter, unable to be extinguished for hours. From miles away, the smoke that billowed from the wreckage could be seen. Several witnesses rushed to help and reported that 2 people died on the spot. They helped other people from the wreckage, but they suffered severe burns. The helicopter had been totally destroyed. It was up in a ball of flames. The pilot and 1 employee were injured, but amazingly, they survived. Sadly for the rest of the passengers, they just weren't so lucky. 4 of the employees died, as well as the helicopter mechanic. The operational services involved in the investigation admitted that the cause of the crash could be a technical malfunction, but they currently couldn't confirm 100%. If the pilot still had the majority of the control, why on earth did he choose not to land when he had the chance? There were so many times tragedy could have been avoided, but it just wasn't. My only thoughts is that maybe he didn't know how badly the helicopter was damaged, but who knows. As always, I'm interested in all of your opinions below. Next up, we've got another clip that serves as a stark reminder of just how quickly things can go wrong. This clip takes us to Friday the 30th of July 2021 in the forests near the village of Takeoff in the northeastern Artvin province of Turkey. Now, Artvin province is full of steep, winding valleys. It's known for its mountainous terrain and stunning natural beauty. It's got dense forests, dramatic cliff faces, and breathtaking views that attract hikers from all across the world. It's the kind of place that families go together to escape the city and enjoy the outdoors together. And that's exactly what a 71-year-old woman thought by the name of Pumpul Karademir. Pumpul had gone on a family walk through the mountainous forests with her husband, her daughter Ayla, her granddaughter Seren, and her son-in-law Kadir. Standing around 200 feet up one of the valleys, this is where the clip begins. Captured by Kadir, the son-in-law, at around noon, you can see the beautiful landscape of the mountains and the family having a great time. The camera pans across the picturesque mountain scenery, showing off the awesome dramatic views. For a few minutes, he stands there in awe, taking in the natural beauty of the area and recording video to keep as a memory of the nice day out. All on video, Kadir paced around the mountain before all of them decided to stop for a minute to admire the particularly impressive view. The group came to a cliff edge, coming closer and closer to a sheer drop of around 230 feet. Despite the risks, they wanted to get a closer look, they wanted to admire it even more, and that's when everything went wrong. While Kadir's still recording, panning across the scenery, just in the background, you can see his 71-year-old stepmother, Pumpul, starting to move closer to the edge of the cliff. She was obviously curious about the view, wanting to look down and see the drop below. On video, her daughter Ayla immediately noticed and started warning her. She said, "Don't go, Mum, don't go," she called out, her voice getting more urgent with each word.
Abo harbiden başım döndü ha.
Anne. Hayır. Anne.
Gitme.
But her stepmother continued towards the edge. Maybe she didn't hear clearly, or maybe she just thought that she was being careful enough. Regardless, you can see her getting closer and closer, and then she appears to trip on a rock or boulder near the edge, and in the footage you can see her legs go up as she tumbles over the edge, and just like that, her fate was sealed.
Anne.
Gitme anne.
Ya gitme.
Tut şunu baba. Baba tut. Baba tut. Tut. Baba tut.
She tumbled 230 feet to her death below. The family's screams of horror are captured in the recording. All you can hear is their screams of despair as they watched their mother fall. Police and paramedics were called to the scene, but with a 230-foot drop, they knew what they were likely to find. She died instantly on impact. 1 minute she was here, and the next she wasn't. Her son-in-law had just been trying to film the beautiful scenery to capture the beautiful moment, and instead he'd filmed the moment his mother-in-law fell to her death. As you can see, there were no safety barriers or warning signs at this spot. This is also one of the appeals of these remote hiking areas, but it's also one of the main dangers. Sometimes we all get caught up enjoying ourselves, unaware that we are stood in a very dangerous position. It's just a shame that one trip, one mistake, cost her her life. Now this next clip, you may or may not be aware of it already, but it's so bizarre and unusual, and it was caught on camera, that I just had to include it on one of these lists. This entry unfolded on the 25th of November 2014 in the beautiful city of Sydney, Australia. That day, a Sheffield Shield cricket game between South Australia and New South Wales was scheduled at the Sydney Cricket Ground. It was the first of 4 days of the Sheffield Shield, the domestic first-class cricket competition of Australia, where top players test their technique and form. It's used by selectors to identify candidates for the Australian national test team. One player on South Australia's side that morning was Philip Hughes, a 25-year-old cricketer who had played domestic cricket for South Australia and Worcestershire. That day, he was playing opening batsman, and the game started with him. At 11 AM, the game kicked off. The crowd chanted, and the game played as you'd expect. All captured on video, the two teams played it out, had a good time, and went for lunch, before returning in the afternoon. It was around 2 hours into the afternoon session when tragedy struck with brutal force. Quite literally. He was already at 63 runs, just 1 run short of his career average. Sean Abbott, a 22-year-old fast bowler, began his run-up. The bouncer he delivered was travelling at around 85 kilometres an hour, not exceptionally fast by cricket standards, so Hughes attempted a hook shot but misjudged the pace. He went through with the shot too quickly, his upper body swinging round. The ball missed the bat. Travelling like a leather bullet, it instead struck him on the side of the neck, just below his left ear, an unprotected area beneath his helmet. Dazed and swaying, he fell flat on his face in front of all the shocked spectators. Players converged on him, but it was clear that he had been seriously injured. The Medicad came out, and the medical staff began administering mouth-to-mouth resuscitation right there on the ground. Horribly, his mum and sister were there watching the game when it happened. Hughes was rushed to St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney, where he underwent emergency surgery. Doctors had to remove part of his skull to relieve the pressure building up in his brain, but after being hit, Hughes never regained consciousness and tragically passed away 2 days later on November the 27th, 2014. The post-mortem revealed the cause of death. A very rare and unusual injury had been caused by the ball. His autopsy showed a traumatic subarachnoid hemorrhage due to a vertebral artery dissection. The cricket ball had compressed his vertebral artery on impact, causing it to tear and split in his neck. This of course triggered massive bleeding on his brain and eventually killed him. The fact that this occurred was 1,000,000 to 1, the fact it was also caught on camera is even rarer. Australian team doctor Peter Bruckner explained just how rare this injury was. Only 100 other cases have ever been documented in medical history, and only one other case had been caused by a cricket ball. At his funeral, held in Hughes' hometown of Maxville, Michael Clarke, the Australian cricket captain, made a speech, closing it off by saying, "Rest in peace, little brother. I'll see you in the middle."
We must dig in and get through to tea. And we must play on. So rest in peace, my little brother. I'll see you out in the middle.
His father Gregory was in tears as he helped carry his coffin at the end of the service. Thousands followed the hearse as it travelled through the heart of Hughes' hometown, a death that has resonated throughout the cricketing world and beyond. A young sportsman cut down just as his life and career was starting to flourish.
Soon after, an inquest was opened. Hughes' family questioned whether the bowling had been too aggressive and whether more could have been done to prevent this. Umpires and players testified that the bowling was competitive but fair. The coroner found no malicious intent from Abbott and no failure to enforce the laws of the game. The coroner ruled it an accidental death resulting from a freak on-the-field accident. Now, this incident changed cricket forever. Helmets were completely redesigned with better protection added to the neck and the lower skull area. Neck guards became standard equipment at professional levels. Medical protocols on cricket grounds were strengthened. Paramedics, medical officers, and emergency response procedures became mandatory at all Sheffield Shield matches. Hughes' test cap number 408 was retired. His final score of 63 not out will forever be remembered. The sport that he loved stole his life away, all because a ball struck in exactly the wrong spot at exactly the wrong angle. In this case, there was no villain, just a young bowler doing his job and a batsman playing the sport that he loved. Next up, we've got a strange and perplexing clip that was recorded on Sunday, March the 11th, 2018, in the southern highlands of Peru, in Huancarani. March in Peru is right at the tail end of the rainy season. Locals expect days of continuous rainfall, sometimes receiving weeks of rain in a single day. This, of course, often causes chaos all across Peru. Flooding is very common, rivers burst their banks, and this causes landslides, especially in the mountainous regions. Locals that live up in these mountainous regions expect problems when it comes to the rainy season, and in 2018, it was no different. From December 2017 through to March, Peru had been getting absolutely hammered by rainstorms. That year, at least 75 people died from flooding and landslides, over 159 bridges were destroyed, and nearly 4,000 kilometers of roads were either damaged or completely blocked. Now, the area of Huancarani had been hit particularly hard by these heavy rains in the days leading up to this entry, causing multiple landslides all over, making it dangerous to travel anywhere, if not impossible. Now, this is where the clip begins. It shows hundreds of people gathering on a mountainous road, waiting, watching, trying to figure out if it was safe to cross. Attention's then drawn to a 36-year-old woman by the name of Santusa. She could be seen standing on the rubble of a landslide that had just occurred. There were crowds of people on either side, both shouting at her to move out of the way, fearing that another landslide could strike at any moment. Despite everyone shouting at her to move, Santusa could be seen standing in front of the ravine with her arms raised, shouting at the earth ahead of her. A new video angle was taken by an eyewitness standing several yards away, and it shows her beckoning the oncoming landslide. She knew it was coming, yet she refused to move. She even moved her legs slightly so that she was directly under the landslide's path. Onlookers called her several times, shouting, "Be careful, lady, it's gonna fall," but she pays no attention. She's standing right there in front of a landslide, but it falls short. It doesn't hit her.
La señora que se retire. Ay, mire, señor.
Señora. Señora. Señora, caramba. Señora, todo se va a caer, señora.
Despite having a close call, she still continued standing right there. It was like she was in some sort of glaze, like she was being possessed or something. She continued standing there, all while a terrible roar of earth could be heard from the distance. Yet another landslide was on the way. And then boom. Just like that, she's hit. She just didn't stand a chance as the ravenous moving earth mass swallowed her completely. She vanished beneath the surface in a flash.
La señora que se retire. Ay, mire, señora borracha. ¡No! señora se metió ahí, Dios mío, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué?
Those watching just couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. A woman's life had been snatched away right in front of them. National police swept the rubble and found her remains later that day, miles down the mountain. And I guess you're wondering, why did she do this? Well, local media suggested that she was drunk at the time. While some do not believe this, some believe that she was sound of mind and knew exactly what she was doing. But honestly, I've no idea. And last, but certainly not least, we have a case that's still baffling investigators to this day. This entry takes us to Ahmedabad, in Western India, on June the 12th, 2025. That morning, Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, was preparing for departure at Sardar Patel International Airport in India. This plane was bound for London, and that day it was a routine international flight, the kind that happened all day long, 365 days a year. It had 230 passengers and 12 crew members aboard. For a bit of background, the Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner is one of the most advanced commercial aircraft in the world. Known for being fuel efficient, quiet, and incredibly reliable, since entering service in 2011, at the time, the 787-8 had a spotless safety record. But that day, this would change forever. The specific aircraft that day was 12 years old, not new, but well maintained and thoroughly inspected. It was being commanded by 56-year-old Captain Sumit Sabwal, an experienced pilot who had logged approximately 15,600 flight hours over his career. Of those, nearly 8,600 were specifically on the Boeing 787. His first officer was 32-year-old Clive Kunder. Clive had around 3,400 flight hours under his belt, with around 1,100 of those being on the Boeing 787. Kunder was the pilot flying that day, meaning he would hand over the controls to the more experienced captain during takeoff and landing. So, as usual, that morning passengers boarded, luggage was loaded, pre-flight checks were completed, and it all looked good. The weather conditions that morning were perfect, there were clear skies, good visibility, no concerns whatsoever. Everything was about as routine as it gets in commercial aviation, not a single red flag was raised. At around 11 AM, Flight 171 was cleared for takeoff. The engines spooled up, and soon the aircraft began rolling down the runway, picking up speed. The pilots went through their standard procedures as the plane accelerated faster and faster down the tarmac, and just like that, the nose lifted and the Boeing 787 left the ground. It climbed into the sky, 100 feet, 200 feet, 400 feet, everything was going exactly as planned. The plane was climbing as you'd expect, reaching 625 feet before something went catastrophically wrong. At around 50 seconds into the flight, according to Flight Radar 24, location data was suddenly lost. The Boeing 787 suddenly lost all of its power. Both engines went silent. The aircraft was now a massive metal glider with no thrust. As quickly as it had climbed, 32 seconds after taking off, it barreled towards the earth like a wrecking ball. On video, you can see the plane getting lower and lower before inevitably crashing through buildings and erupting into a massive, deadly fireball. The plane eventually came to rest in the hostel block of a medical college in Ahmedabad. just 1.7 kilometers away from the runway it had left just seconds ago. The impact was devastating. The sound and the vibrations of the plane hitting the ground and the subsequent explosion echoed across the entire city, witnessed by hundreds who watched it fall from the sky on the ground. A huge plume of black smoke drifted across the Indian skyline. First responders rushed to the scene fearing the worst, but even their worst fears couldn't have possibly prepared them for what they were about to witness. The aircraft was completely destroyed and burning like Hail Mary. Several college buildings were severely damaged by the impact and the subsequent fire that engulfed the wreckage. Before first responders even arrived, astonishing footage shows a lone man limping from the wreckage. His face was in shock, his clothes were charred, and he was covered in cuts and bruises. Somehow, some way, he had survived. Tragically, the same couldn't be said for everyone else aboard. Out of 242 people on that plane, he was the only survivor to walk away.
नज़रों के सब सामने हुआ था। मेरे खुद को भी बिलीव नहीं होता कि मैं कैसे उसमें से जिंदा बाहर निकला, क्योंकि थोड़ा टाइम लेके तो मेरे को लगा था कि मैं भी मरने वाला हूँ, लेकिन जब मेरी आँख खुल के मैं देखा ना तो मुझे लगा मैं जिंदा हूँ। तो मैंने ट्राई किया, जब मेरी सीट थे वो मेरी बेल्ट निकाला, मैंने वो ट्राई किया जहाँ से निकल सकता वहाँ से, तो मैं निकल गया वहाँ से। मेरे नज़रों के सामने एयर होस्टल और दूसरे आंटी अंकल सभी उसमें मेस हो गए थे सभी। तो सडनली 5-10 सेकंड कैसे लगा जैसे स्ट्रक हो गया वो। बाद में से मेरे को लगा कि कुछ हुआ। बाद में प्लेन में लाइट ऑन हो गई, ग्रीन और वाइट। बाद में वो पता नहीं वो प्लेन टेक ऑफ ज्यादा करने के लिए वो रेस तो बोलते हैं क्या, रेस दिया होगा ऐसा कुछ, और सीधा स्पीड में ही घुस गया। मैं जो साइड पे था ना, वो साइड हॉस्टल पे नहीं लैंड हुई थी, हॉस्टल के जो ग्राउंड फ्लोर है ना जैसे नीचे, वहाँ लैंड हुई थी। तो मुझे दूसरे के बारे में मेरे को पता नहीं, लेकिन मैं जहाँ लैंड हुआ था ना वो नीचे की साइड थी। जब सामने थोड़ा इधर पेस है, मैं ट्राई कर सकता हूँ निकलने के लिए, तो मैंने ट्राई किया निकलने के लिए, तो फिर मैं निकल गया उधर, क्योंकि अपोजिट साइड पे था ना वो बिल्डिंग का वो था ना दीवार, तो उधर से कोई शायद नहीं निकल सका होगा।
On the ground, 19 people were also killed and 67 others were also seriously injured. This was the first fatal accident and hull loss involving a 787 since the type entered service in 2011. Now this is where it gets really weird. The man who survived was 40-year-old British national Vik Kumar Ramesh. Ramesh was sitting in C-11A. Now why is this weird, you might ask? Well, months before the crash, C-11A became a sort of meme online because it was right next to the window, yet it had no window seat. Several other airlines tweeted and made jokes about this particular seat. There were so many posts about 11A that it actually is kind of scary, and the fact that out of the entire plane, he was the only one to survive sat in 11A, well, that's one hell of a weird coincidence. One that gives me goosebumps right now. Ramesh has since done several viral interviews detailing his insane survival, which I highly recommend you go watch.
It is miracle, isn't it? What can I say? Like, still, I'm not believe. I'm only one survivor in all boarding, like 242 something in NA. I'm lucky as man, but also I lost everything. My brother for me. I lost my brother in it.
But the survival story somehow isn't even the strangest part of this case. Investigators immediately began probing the wreckage and cockpit recorders to understand what went wrong, and what they found was deeply disturbing. Just seconds after takeoff, both of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner's fuel control switches abruptly moved to the cutoff position. Both of them. Not just one, both. At the exact same time. This starved the engines of fuel and triggered a total power loss. Now, switching to cutoff is a move that's typically only done after landing. You do it when you're shutting down the aircraft, never ever during takeoff. So it's very bizarre. These lever lock fuel switches are designed specifically to prevent accidental activation. Obviously, they must be pulled up to unlock before flipping, a safety feature that's been standard since the 1950s. So basically, you can't literally physically accidentally turn them off or on. A Canada-based air accidents investigator told the BBC that it would be almost impossible to pull both switches with a single movement of one hand. This makes accidental deployment very unlikely. So it makes you wonder, what on earth happened in that cockpit? The cockpit recording captures only one pilot asking the other, why did he cut the off? The other person replies that he didn't do it. The current recording doesn't clarify who said what. The investigation shows that the switches were returned to their normal in-flight position seconds later, triggering the automatic engine relight, but by then, it was far too late. At the time of the crash, one engine was regaining thrust, while the other had barely been relit. If they were higher up in the air, it might have been fine, but because they were so low, they just simply ran out of time and altitude. In many cockpit emergencies, pilots may press the wrong buttons or make incorrect selections, but there was no indication of such a situation here, nor any discussion in the cockpit suggesting that the fuel switches were selected by mistake. So that leaves us with one massive question. Why would one of the pilots turn off both fuel levers? Levers that are intentionally designed to not be accidentally activated. An interim report was released in July 2025, but critics argue it unfairly focused on the actions of the pilots, diverting attention away from a possible fault with the aircraft itself. In this report, no cause for the switch movement was given. At the time of saying this crash remains under investigation. Some speculate that there are voice recordings that have yet to be made public that hold the key to solving this perplexing puzzle. Was it intentional? Was it a result of confusion in the cockpit? Was it an error with the plane? Sadly, we just don't have the answers right now. But that is the end of the video. May all those featured rest in peace. Holy moly, that last entry was crazy and baffling. Now, I was actually going to stop doing the recaps at the end of these videos, but Alex, my top patron, asked kindly for it to return, so here we are. Hello Alex, if you're listening. I'm actually interested in your opinions below. Should I keep or ditch this end recap? Starting from the top, we've got the heli crash in Dagestan. What a crazy and mental clip. I can see why many accused it of being AI due to the fact the helicopter flies for so long without a tail. But as I say, it's due to the fact that this was a special designed helicopter. Most would have failed instantly due to this. The pilot got a second and a third and a fourth chance to land it to save everyone, but failed to take it many times. What was going through his head, I honestly don't know. I'm no pilot, so I've no idea if it was possible to successfully land himself without injury, but it did look like he had many chances. Even for the passengers, they could have unbuckled and leaped to safety, but they didn't. This is one that leaves you with more questions than answers. Then we've got the cliff slip in Turkey. This one was crazy tragic. To make one mistake and die in front of your entire family, it's awful. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, just stand back, watch your footing, because it really isn't worth your life. Then we've got the insane, bizarre cricket death in Australia. This is a case that I've wanted to cover for ages, but I just couldn't seem to fit it into a video. It was too long or too short, but it just goes to show that you can die at any moment in life. You can die putting a light bulb in. You can die brushing your teeth, or you can even die playing an innocent game of cricket. I'm glad that things were changed after his death to ensure that this doesn't happen again, but like with anything in life, sometimes you don't know something's wrong until someone gets hurt. Then we've got the landslide in Peru. What was going on in this clip? Actually, what was going on? It's mental. There's crowds of people shouting at her to get out of the way, but she didn't budge at all. it makes me believe that this was intentional. But why choose to go out this way? To be buried by thousands of tons of dirt and debris, so much that it weighs on your lungs that you can't even get a breath. It's awful and tragic. Then, talking about tragic, we have the Air India Flight 171. Holy moly. This one really takes the cake as one of the worst, most shocking and crazy entries that I've covered in terms of what happened, as well as the footage that was captured. The angles that you can see the plane crashing from just leaves you gawping. I honestly have no idea what could have happened inside that cockpit, other than a massive plane failure or an intentional turn-off by one of the pilots. I really hope that it isn't the latter. What's weird about this case is that one survivor lived in seat 11A. That gave me goosebumps, knowing that several airlines had memed on this seat for months, if not years before this incident. What are the chances that the only survivor is sat in that particular seat? Most people would post online that they felt unhappy or felt hard done by being sat in 11A because they've got no window. But for one passenger, it literally saved his life. It's totally bizarre and it does make you wonder. But other than that, I'm interested in what all of you thought below because this video was chock full of nightmares. Before I go, really quickly, if you're interested in this content and you want to see it ad-free, uncut and uncensored, why not go ahead and check out my Patreon below. Over there, I'm uploading a completely separate video, completely separate to YouTube. That doesn't mean it's overly gory, just without the YouTube restrictions. And while you're down there, if you're not subscribed and you've made it this far, what are you doing, you silly Billy? Go on there and smack that sub button and tickle that notification bell to be alerted at when I release content such as this. But I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.